Mérida is magical. We are visiting Mérida for the first time and are loving every moment of Mérida. Mérida is memorable. What we know of this peninsula is that it is the site of a crater where a meteorite hit millions and millions and millions of years ago. So we're going to talk a little bit about the history, but let me just say this is the first in a series about Mérida because there's just too much here to share, just too much to try and include in just one video. Just look at this beautiful, typical Mérida blouse, and these flowers are the flowers known as the flowers of the cenotes, the underground waterways have these beautiful flowers opening, and these are representations of them. So again, lots to share. We're going to do a series of videos on Mérida, but first, of course, this is Latina Literati. Mérida is the capital of the state of Yucatan in Mexico. It is the 20th largest state in the United States of Mexico. It is called by the people here Mayab, land of the Maya. The name Yucatan is not real. Let me explain. When the invaders from Spain come and they ask the people here, what is this land called? The Maya who met them say, Vic Athan, Vic Athan. In other words, what are you saying? What are you talking about? WTF. And so incredibly, the Spanish imposed the name Yucatan, which taken to its original Vic Athan means, what are you talking about? We don't understand you. And it is imposed upon the whole peninsula. Just incredible how these things happen, and more incredible why it wouldn't be corrected in the 500 years or at least 250 years since Spanish rule here. In any case, I'm going to continue to call it the Yucatan Peninsula because that's what it's called. But Mayab is the land of the Maya. It is the word that the Maya use for the area. And it is an area that is very lush, very green, and for at least 7,000 years, our Mayan ancestors have lived in this area along the white sand beaches, beautiful lagoons, rivers, in all of the different points. There are many, many historical archaeological sites in the Yucatan Peninsula. And in another video, we'll get to why it was chopped up into 3 different states. But there is a historical, political, economic reason, so stay tuned. But of much interest is about the 4 million Maya that live, or the 4 million inhabitants of this area. A large number still speak the Mayan language. And that includes, of course, the Maya that live next door in Campeche and in Quintana Roo, which are the other 2 states that make up the Yucatan Peninsula. One of the many strengths of the Maya people is that they are unified. They consider themselves one. And in fact, when you visit them and you tell them you're from a country that has a Maya population, they say, you are Maya like we. So basically, you're part of the family. It's been very sweet to hear that again and again here. You are Maya, okay. Obviously, even though we are very much mixed and don't speak the language, but it's very kind to be included in such a beautiful, beautiful group. So the Maya themselves are incredibly interesting because from the beginning of Maya society in this area, there was not one chief or one emperor or one cacique. it was each community had their own leaders, and so that meant that there was a decentralized way of dealing with problems and also with developing whatever the resources were in the area. It wasn't all sent to one central place. And so what happens when the invaders come in, it is very difficult for the Spanish invaders to just conquer, because it's one jurisdiction after another. In other words, you don't take, like they did under the Aztec Empire, just take Teotihuacan and you've taken the whole empire because that's the main place. Here there are many, many different jurisdictions. And in fact, the word for jurisdiction in Maya is Cuchabal. And so each Cuchabal had their own leaders and their own fortifications. And so it took the Spanish hundreds of years. So when the rest of Mexico is under the virreinato, or part of the lands that are claimed by the Spanish crown in the Yucatan Peninsula, it would take several hundred years for this to happen. Not only is it jungle, so it's not easy to traverse. People get malaria, the soldiers would drop off, but you don't have a single place to take and then you've got it. You have literally got to take it, kilometer by kilometer, town by town. And so that there were a lot of negotiations, which I think is interesting, which gave the Maya, I feel, leverage that some of the other indigenous groups that were conquered by the Spanish didn't have. And I thought that was fabulous intel to share with you. As I mentioned in this video, I'm not going to go into the conquest of the Spanish or into the development of different economic aspects or even political aspects. I really want to focus on just highlights because there's so much here. And so let me just begin by saying that when you're visiting Mérida, in my opinion, the number one place you need to visit is el Museo del Gran Mundo Maya, the Great Museum of the Mayan World. And it was just worth the entire morning we spent there. It's a beautiful building. It's laid out in an incredible manner. So you walk in and you see these beautiful phrases from different Mayan figures, and you walk in and you look at the diagrams of the traditional Maya. Of course, you have the pre-classical, classical, post-classical timelines, and you have recreations of beautiful pyramids and all of the incredible pottery and weavings and farming and just incredible products that have been here forever. And again, I feel like that deserves its own video because there's so much there. But El Museo del Gran Mundo Maya, the Museum of the Great Mayan World, is just a treasure trove, fabulous. And we visited it on our first day, and I really felt like it set the stage for taking a look at the rest of the different experiences we had on the trip. Just a really great museum, well done. And so everything is in Spanish, in Maya, and in English. So if you speak any of those three languages, you can enjoy the museum easily. There's a great film in one of the rooms. And of course, there's a whole series of what happens with the synchronization of the traditional Mayan belief system and the Spanish, and also modern day Mexico and Mérida and the different political issues that arose over the last 200 years. Again, there's so much here, and so we'll be doing other videos on Mérida as well. Among the many things that are shared in the Gran Museo Maya are a poem by a Mayan poet, Jorge Miguel Cocompech. I think it's Cocompech, and just a beautiful poem. Just a few lines. I'm going to read it in Spanish and then read it in English. It's just so beautiful. El que quiere disfrutar del canto de los pájaros no necesita jaula sino sembrar árboles. El canto de los pájaros pertenece a todos. Nadie es su propietario. If you want to enjoy the bird song, do not build cages, plant trees. The songs of the birds belong to no one. No one has the right to own the bird song. And I thought this poem was just perfect in showing the cosmology or the perspective or the sense that there is a common right to everything, really. whether it's waterways or fresh air or the songs of the birds. There's just a completely different way of looking at life and society here in the Maya world. That was really, really touching, and I was moved by it. Very beautiful. So in Mérida, there's a lot to see. There's a beautiful cathedral, and there's very wide avenues that were built at the economic height of Mérida, that were built after the Champs-Élysées. Mérida was the richest state in Mexico, and again, I feel like that'll be its own video, but there was so much wealth here that you can see. It's a city that was planned for those whose economic status was quite high. And so there are many museums and many old homes, and you can see how they tried to replicate what they believed was the best of life in where they'd come from. Those that come from Europe obviously tried to recreate the mansions of Spain and palacetes, as they're called. But again, there's a lot of architectural interest here, and of course archaeological interest. There's just so much. I need to share this with you in phases. So this is phase one. This is number one in a series of videos on Mérida. And now on to my favorite part of the video, the book recommendations. And today I'm going to start with a book that I've recommended in the past. It's called The Jungle of Stone, and it's about two men, one from the US and one from England, who go through and document, they actually draw out the Mayan cities of stone that they've heard about. There are rumors, and so they take a boat down to this area and start on muleback going from. It would take them several years to go from these stone cities, and they're the first ones to actually draw them out. And those drawings are preserved and are still used because obviously they're doing this in the 1800s, and so you can imagine 200 years later how much has been stolen or how much has been buried or how much is no longer there, to get a sense of what was there when they saw that. So really fascinating book, Jungle of Stone, highly recommended. Again, I've mentioned it before in the videos. And as always, check your local library, your local bookstore, and we leave links in the description box below so you can purchase the books, new or used, from independent booksellers online. The second book I'd like to share with you is called Aquí y Allá en Yucatán. And it's a fabulous book because first, it's written by a woman. Second, she arrives in the Yucatan in the 1800s. And so this is at the height of when there's a push and pull between trying to have the Maya preserve their traditions and their way of life and having the Ladinos, or those who are of Spanish descent try and impose their ways. Everything from slavery on haciendas to the syncretism of the religious and cosmological beliefs. So it's really interesting because, again, you have hundreds of years of the Spanish not being in charge here. Mérida is very fresh in that it is not a place that has 500 years of conquest, but rather half of that. So in the 1800s, this woman is a witness to the Maya defending their ways and trying to keep their traditions as they're being pushed economically and physically from the land that they have been, where their ancestors have been living for 7,000 years. So it's, again, just incredible how things happen, but it's well worth a read because of the perspective and because of the time frame. That's a critical time frame for the Maya people of the Yucatan, of Mayab. Another incredible aspect to the whole Spanish conquest is this need to categorize people. And so there's this very strict caste system. And so depending on who your parents are and where they were born, and it will determine who you are and what you can do. But again, this is so new in the Mayan perspective that you have some wiggle room. And so this third book that I'm going to recommend to you is amazing. The author is an expert, also amazing man. He's the editor of several magazines, I think the Americas, and professor of different things at large universities in the US. So the Black Middle, Africans, Maya, and Spaniards in colonial Yucatan by Matthew Restal, Dr. Matthew Restal. Amazing book because it talks about how race played a part in the development of the Yucatan and how there was some wiggle room, how people were able to maybe not stay in the constraints of where they were placed by the caste, the very strict caste and racial categorization that occurred under the Spanish, because it was so new and because it was, you know, the equivalent of the Wild West, so to speak, in terms of the Mexican Republic, far away from central government. So it gave a lot of opportunity. In any case, this is just the first video on Mérida. There's more to come. We've had an amazing time, fabulous time. The people of Mérida have been so welcoming. It's just been, the food alone really deserves its own video, so we'll get there. But we would love to hear what you are reading. If you've been to Mérida, if you have recommendations, what do you think? And what would you like us to talk about? Because we're always happy to try and prepare videos on things that you'd like us to talk about. We would love you to subscribe to Latina Literati, and we hope that you've enjoyed this first video on Mérida. Thank you so much. And as always, con mucho cariño, mucho salud, mucho amor. Gracias.